Awesome. I'm going to share, oh, actually, I'm going to share my screen and we're just going to like jump into it. You're all pouring in. Hopefully you can see my screen. Trace, can you see that too?
Sure can.
Awesome. So excited to do this, by the way. Last time we ran a webinar together was back in October, I think. And from that example, had so much feedback and interest in investors and clients wanting to replicate that awesome example. Thought we should, jump in and go through another example, mutual client of ours, incredible fast success story, really inspiring, but also replicable for all of you here tonight. Really it's all about you guys looking to take action. The fact that you're here on school holidays is awesome. And in terms of like where the market's going, this is the right time to be educating and literally getting lending and getting your strategy into gear. So would you buy and renovate a property sight unseen? This is a real case study that, so it's a real event. It's real clients of ours. Also, stay till the end and we'll talk about the Renovation Road Tour where Tracy and I will be with our investors. What for tonight, what are we calling them, Trace?
Dick and Jane.
Dick and Jane. So you can come and meet Dick and Jane. And and us and the power team. It's going to be the best, and it's not something we've really talked about before. We have this example, you see the photos, the floor plans, the numbers, but this is an opportunity that is a whole step further. Come and immerse yourself and walk through this actual property. Brief disclaimer for the night. This is all required and we're happy to share this as an example. Think about how it may or may not suit your circumstances. You will have the opportunity to meet with Tracy and myself. We will send an email tomorrow with an opportunity to catch up one-on-one.
So as we go, sorry, Ilse, as we go, pop any questions in the chat and we can get to them at the end.
Yes, exactly. I feel like you should be first. You go first.
Oh, why?
I don't know. I just feel like you should.
Hi, Ron. My name is Tracy. So I'm the director of Debt Free Diva. I am the Debt Free Diva, to be fair. I am a qualified financial advisor specializing in mortgages and investments. My backstory, so I didn't come from a bank or anything. I opened my first company at 18, quite a nice entrepreneur. Shut it down at the age of 24, walked away with $94,000 of debt, paid it off in 3 years, and then bought my first house a year later. 18 months after buying it, I turned it into an Airbnb while I went out renting. So I fully immersed myself in the investment property market. That property is now long-term rental, and I have since the last webinar even, have bought my second house, which I currently live in. So I'm now a proud owner of 2 properties on a single income.
Oh, amazing.
And people tell you it can't be done.
Oh, no, this is why I love when we get to do things together, because I think you're just so approachable, so relatable. I think even on the email tomorrow, we'll make sure we send out some of the podcast links so people can hear your story, because it's honestly so impressive. And I think a lot of Kiwis can relate. They may be in that earlier stage in debt or have, actions they need to take to be investor ready, or, to purchase a property, they need to take certain steps. And I think there'll be so much value from that, that they can learn from your story. And like you say, like you are a walking example of taking action and completely changing your circumstances. So I'm really grateful to do this with you, Trace. I am Ilse Wolfe, Director of Wolfe Property Coaching, have been investing for about 19 years, part-time, full-time, nearly 10 years of that, and now coaching, I was going to say Kiwis and people all around the world. And that's the whole point. This should be about you thinking how you could replicate tonight's example and results for yourself, regardless of where you are. So welcome if you are local, welcome if you are logging in from another time zone. Awesome. Tonight's agenda, very timely to have Tracy with us because there are lots of changes in the lending environment. She'll cover that. And then we're going to jump straight into our mutual client's story and talk about Tracy's lending strategy for them, how the strategy works to their individual goals. So something for you to reflect upon for yourselves. And then I'll sort of talk about power teams. Who are they? What does that mean? And renovations focused, the renovations focused strategy that we are helping implement for Dick and, oh, what's it,
Dick and Jane.
Jane.
It's a movie. Dick and Jane Have Fun or something like that. With Jim Carrey in it. You got to see it. It's hilarious.
So, over to you, Tracy. So I think let's talk about the context we're working within, the lending environment. This is all your, do you want me to keep these notes up or should we chat?
Let's keep these notes up so everyone can kind of see what also so I can keep on track because I could talk about this all day, every day. So obviously OCR was last week and we had a drop, which was much needed. So for anybody who doesn't really know what the OCR does, it basically is the government's control on inflation. So COVID hit, they dropped it all the way down. Inflation went out of control. Then they raised it, in my opinion, too quickly. So then everyone freaked out and couldn't afford their mortgages. So now they're dropping it down on the other side, coming back to more normal levels. Normal levels for interest rates do float anywhere between the 4 and 8%. Where they kind of went wrong was going from a 1.99 to an 8% for some people was really hard. So what happens when the OCR drops is that floating rates react almost immediately, actually within an hour, whereas fixed rates, because money that the bank lends to us is actually purchased from offshore, so they have to use up their current allocation at those interest rates, and therefore the fixed interest rates only sort of flow through later on. So it's only yesterday and today, that we are starting to see the 4.99 for 1 year, and I even got a 4.95 for 18 months today.
Wow.
Which is outstanding. And we're hopefully going to see those come down very slightly, a little bit more as we go, but we should see them start to stabilize now, depending what old Trump is doing.
Yeah, any thoughts or insights you want to share on that? I think there's a lot of questions still around about what could be the potential impacts as of what Trump's implemented.
The thing is, and the other investment advisors and mortgage advisors and stuff I speak to, is that we don't really know. At the end of the day, Trump is a businessman. But I do think he's taken this tariff thing a bit far. So we don't really know, but what we do know is markets recover. So if we can just hang on, ride it out, don't make decisions based on hypotheticals, only do what you can do with the information that you have at the time. Is the big thing.
Control what you can control, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, cool. Oh, anything else you want to detail? Yeah.
The other thing, well, with the goals, the most important thing when it comes to lending, and especially in strategies like this, and the reason it's really good to speak to a broker is because every single human is different and every single goal is different. So it's important to find a property strategy or an investment strategy that suits your end goal.
I think I agree. Combination of that along with your personal risk profile, right? So what's the speed of progress you want? Do you plan to hold property, flip property, trade? Do you want to be hands-on? Matching your personality type and what you want to take on alongside what Tracy says, the lending is possible. So what would be really great, Tracy and I were talking about the differences in approach on the lending. So we thought we'd start off with a poll to see where you're sitting in terms of your next refix. So if you have a mortgage already, whether it be owner occupied or investment property, we're really curious to hear. Can you see that, by the way? We're really curious to hear what your priority is. Are you looking for the cheapest interest rate, regardless of for how long, or are you looking for predictability of your outgoing on that mortgage? So we'll just put that up for a few mo's, and then
says I can't vote, Ilse. This is nonsense. No, I'm kidding.
What's that?
Says I can't vote.
Awesome. Okay, so 3, 2, 1 in poll. Oh, okay, that's interesting. It's a little more even than I expected, actually. 45%
Wow.
looking for the cheapest interest rate, but higher skew towards long-term predictable cash flow. Any thought of that as a result Tracy, I'm definitely seeing a lot more attention overall from investors about cash flow and generating high yields, as opposed to talking about wealth and capital growth and equity. I don't know, what do you think? So 55% long-term predictable cash flow over cheapest interest rate.
Yeah, so I'm seeing a bit of that as well. The people looking at the 2-3 year rates to see what they're doing,
Mm,
because we've just come out of such an unstable environment where fixing 1 year, 1 year, 1 year. But if you're going into an investment property, especially if you're right at the beginning of your 30-year mortgage, um, a lot of the conversations I'm having are around like, what do you want the next 2 years to look like? And a lot of people are like, we just want to know how much we're paying. We
mm.
don't care.
It's understanding our outgoings.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And also off the back of such high top ups, right? Like the last 3 years was just hike, hike, hike. Everything's gone up. It's interesting because I think there was so much talk about wealth and retirement in the market the last few years, but I can really hear cash flow, yield, returns. Hearing investors talk to me about that is quite a shift. Yeah. Alrighty. Jumping into that. So, oh, cool. Okay, very interesting. Good to hear what you are focusing on. So, moving into Dick and Jane's situation. So, this is a couple who are in their 50s, roughly. And Tracy, do you want to talk us through? They came to you first. So, would you like to sort of paint the picture of how they came to you, what their goals were, maybe a bit about their personalities or risk profile, and what they wanted to achieve?
Yep, absolutely. So they reached out to me. I went and sat down with them. They've had investment properties in the past, which they were topping up every week. They had some crazy tenant nightmare stories, etc. So they definitely were of the mindset like, we know we've got to do something to help our retirement, but we don't want to be topping up heaps and heaps every week kind of situation.
Mm-hmm.
So what I kept hearing in that initial conversation is, we want to get sorted for our retirement. However, we can't afford to be pouring all this money into an investment property, like $500 a week or whatever, to top it up. So that's when, I mean, my first hurdle was making sure we could get a 30-year mortgage, because obviously the longer the mortgage, the lower the repayments are. And when you're sort of late 50s, getting a 30-year mortgage is definitely difficult.
Mm.
So the equity was there in their current home, but it was around this project was around servicing, or like affordability of it. So that's when I sort of went, well, how hands-on do you want to be? So they were kind of nervous. We're on a mid-scale risk profile here, so we weren't ready to take real high risks where you're buying something that's got weeds growing through the windows. But
Fair.
yeah, yeah. But we weren't buying a new build either. So mid risk profile. Didn't want to do any of the renovations themselves, which are also fair. For anybody that actually knows me, knows that I'm not allowed hammers for a reason. Get it? Um, yeah, so that's when, once we'd sort of got the money together, we realized how much could borrow. The bank gave us a 30-year mortgage. Thanks, bank. I referred them straight on to you, Ilse, because I was like, well, here's a woman that can take all the stress away of the building part of it.
Yeah.
And help.
I'll just pop this up in case you want to talk to any of it.
I was like,
I think, and also just to point out that they live in Hamilton, so in terms of affordability, and I guess when you were looking at affordability, servicing, leveraging their own home for the purpose of this next project, the market in Hamilton is definitely a premium one, I would say, compared to other regional centres. Returns are trickier. I overall find Hamilton quite low for long-term rents compared to many other locations. So I guess if they were looking to you for a minimal top-up where possible, and also from an affordability point of view, you're probably looking at how to really contain total debt. Would that be fair?
right.
And marry that up with them saying, hey, look, we don't really want to top up. How do we reduce? Would it be fair to say reduce debt, but also push the cash flow?
Yes, 100%. And you wouldn't be able to reach that in Hamilton market at the moment. Like
Yeah,
a $500,000 in Hamilton's not returning $700 a week. And if it is, it's not
not what you
ideal.
want to buy.
Yeah, it's not where you want to buy.
And it's actually interesting because I am noticing there is the odd listing there that starts with a 5, but that's quite new. If we go back 2 years ago, they all started with a 7, 8. You know, it was very hard to get a standalone with a 5 or 6. So definitely opportunities out there. So yeah, there's definitely opportunity. I think adding value to get the most out of it, depending on your situation and how much you can lend, maybe that does work. But certainly there are better places if we were trying to hit both of those goals. And so knowing that they didn't want to have to travel around, but they did want to get somewhere, achieve a property where they could have a higher return for less debt, or less of a purchase price than in Hamilton. We have our power teams on the ground to help with that. So I guess really leaning into the power team and being remote, one of I think the aspects of my services and how I go about renovating in places other than where I am and now where my clients are, I hadn't really thought too much about how distinctive that was early on, but just over time, I've really come to realize how powerful that is. That oh, sorry, typo, that regardless of whether you're in Auckland or in the UK, if you are investing in a different city or town from where you are, remote is remote, doesn't really matter where you are. If you're not where the property is, it's still remote. So you need to have those trusted people to guide you end to end. And when clients, basically with Dick and Jane, when we decided to kick off their first project, Tracy had said, here's the lending, here's what they can achieve. I met with them and we talked about a few markets where we could have comparable results for comparable levels of debt and return. And knowing that they really wanted to be guided by yourself and I, one of the most important strategies we had was directly introducing them to proven real estate agents who had previously delivered success for my clients, so that I knew that was top of the list because they were less likely to want to spend hours scrolling, even though I would set them up with very specific filters. They really wanted to be pointed to the success. And what I think was really awesome is that we initially made some introductions and then within, it was 2 or 3 weeks, I'll say Jake, he basically called them off the back of that initial introduction and he said, hey, here's a property. It was originally on an auction method, which is actually, to be honest, really low down our list because it's hard as a buyer to have control. There's a lot of competition. You don't know the playing field, and there's a lot of potential sunk cost upfront. If you're conducting due diligence, you need reports, build, meth, etc., lim, and until you get in the auction room, it's hard to be in control or know where you're at. There are other strategies around that, but for them, I felt that confidence-wise, that was probably not the right direction. So then Jake, the agent that they'd met, he actually called them and just said, hey, I have this property. It's on an auction method. It has not sold. It's around the time of the auction. He said, look, I think this is perfect because he knew from previous properties he actually had brought to us off market. This was very similar. It's just that the vendor had initially wanted to try auction. So through that kind of, I guess, intel, we were able to run our ROI analyses super quickly. And the next day, even though, of course, he was still being an agent, doing his job, created a multi-offer situation, we were able to look at the priorities and understand the nuances of the motivations of the vendor. So the first thing that was a great success is that they got on contract, and this is actually the first crack they had at any property. So very quick success, and we had that on contract for 420. So this is where we're really going to go in now. In terms of what kept them safe and comfortable, we looked at a due diligence contract, made sure we could then rely on Tracy to give feedback with you on how does this contract look with respect to the lending you've secured. And because it was that tricky time of year, end of December, awesome time to buy. Not many people are. Lots of buyers take their eye off the ball, but difficult to navigate because all the trade teams on ground are really trying to get their existing projects done before Christmas. It's sort of tricky calculating work days and who's coming back. So we worked that out. 15 work days over Christmas, New Year was perfect. And it just so happens I'm from New Plymouth and happened to be going to visit family there. So we had lined up immediately access through the agent and our amazing builder down there. Andy and I basically had that lined up. So 10 a.m. I think it was the 2nd of January, first thing. We went in there on Dick and Jane's behalf, and we worked out that 3 to 4 bedroom conversion. So what the physical layout would be. Stay tuned. We looked at the budget, and I could discuss with him on site on their behalf. Look at the scope, aspects that we want, aspects we don't need, based on how that property already tenanted and presented, and then also look at the integrity. Through that intel, through the reports, and basically, as someone else calls it, the pain train, through what we find out about the property, we were able to negotiate down. So that was a $395K final price, or a $25,000 reduction through the findings of DD. Were you getting insights from them live at that time, Tracy?
Yes and no. So I was off for the Christmas break, but only partially, because I also had a contract on my own house. I think I put a contract on the same day as Dick and Jane. We were in it together. But yeah, I was getting updates. That I must say, the builder, from a financial perspective, the builder was amazing to work with, because banks are very particular. Like, you can't just go to a bank and say, I want $100,000 for renovations. They're going to go, well, we need to know what bolts and screws you're using. So he made it super easy for me as well, and less confusing for Dick and Jane, because they didn't have to go through and try and figure out how to get this quote and everything together. I do just want to talk about the interest rate, what I did with the finance on the interest rate side once we went unconditional. So our approval letter said we had to document the loan or draw down by a certain date, and it was like middle of February. Otherwise we have to reapply for finance. So that's a normal condition, I guess.
And time frames, yeah, typical.
Yeah, very typical. But we had a long time till settlement. So what I did, knowing that interest rates are coming down, is I documented the loan on a floating rate, because you get 6 months to use a documented loan. And then 2 weeks before, actually just like 3 weeks before, I think, we actually circled back and got them on a 4.99. So if we documented it on an interest rate
at the
when
time,
we were unconditional, it would have been a 5.89. So, and we got them on a 4.99. So
it's amazing, because in terms of cash flow, not just yield, but the actual cash flow, because they're super sensitive to this. We want this to be, not a top up, neutral to positive. That makes such a difference on that. And it's so clever to say, hey, lawyer, here are the documents, do not let them sign.
I think that was literally what the email said. I was like, this is what we're doing. Do not sign these documents. And the lawyer's like, okay, what's going on? We've got new docs out to them now, and it's all good. But yeah, it was all part of the strategy to make it cash flow positive. I knew interest rates were coming down with such a long settlement. I was like, how are we going to make this work to our advantage? And that's what we did.
Amazing. And I think talking about the reno, so I think in this case you've secured lending on that based on the quote, which is sometimes required, sometimes not, depending on the structure per the buyer's circumstance, correct? And I think that was really great that the builder could provide that to you, because it completed your paperwork. Also knowing them not having experience with renovations and needing almost not, I guess you can't say it's certainty, but more of a fixed cost or a known circumstance to go unconditional on that fitted their profile, right?
100%.
Yeah. So happy. I'm just so excited, because they're settling in a couple of weeks, and then we actually get to, well, you as well, we get to see it. So so you say
6 days. They settle in 6 days time.
Oh yeah, cool. Okay, so I think we go through about week 4, which will be so good, because the new layout will be there in progress as well. So yeah, no, very cool. So in the sense of what they wanted, Andy and our build team down there have literally provided a full turnkey solution, which means the entire scope and budget, etc., is locked. They will just get on with it. There are no decisions that Dick and Jane need to make, other than if there are any small amendments or variations that pop up in those first few days. But yeah, very exciting. Cool. Let's get into the project. And just so that everyone is super clear about the jargon because we live and breathe this and probably don't think we have jargon, but I'm sure we do. Tracy, would you like to start us off?
We speak a different language sometimes, I think.
No, I have to be held accountable. So you
Yeah.
break it down.
So deposit. When you're buying an investment property and it's not a new build, you need 30% deposit for that property. This can be used cash, or in this case, we actually secured it against the owner-occupied property. So it just means that 30% of the owner-occupied property now belongs to the new property, basically.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, cool.
And
There we go. And so I'll talk about gross yield if you like. The way that with Wolfe Property, we like to standardize that there are many different ways you can define it. For our purposes, I always assume that my investors, my clients are buying with all debt because the most common scenario is that 30% deposit comes from a different property, and then the 70% or balance of the purchase property. So in this case, the investment property, the 70% of that comes on that property with another lender or the same lender, depending on the advice. And so I assume that that's a 100% debt, but also on top of that, we also have the renovation spend, and generally speaking, that is also debt. That's very, very common because my clients are generally making the most of leverage. So gross yield to us, by definition, is the rent times 52 weeks, so the annual rent divided by all of the debt. So I always assume it's 100% debt, including renovation. And we want to do that so that we can standardize or we can equalize the way that we view one deal over another to literally bounce them off each other. Which one is superior, which one's average, what is below average, and we ignore it. We want to make sure we're comparing apples with apples. Equity.
yeah, so equity, which is this buzzword that we keep throwing around, is basically whatever. It's not even just the market value, but the banks have certain systems that they look into, which I've got access to, and they say this is what your property is worth according to our calculator. So that minus your current mortgage is how much equity you've got to play with. Now, remembering you've got to leave 20% equity in your owner occupied.
Mm-hmm.
We normally say you can lend up to 80% of an owner occupied property. So for example, if you had a house that's worth 500,000, you have to leave 100,000 behind. So we can borrow up to 400,000, including existing lending.
Yeah.
So if you had existing lending of 399, we've only got 1,000 for the next one.
This example doesn't work.
No, okay, like it doesn't work. So that's how we work it out. It's not just like that equity position includes your current mortgage as well. So
Yeah.
that's where somebody like me comes in and spits a bunch of numbers at you,
Yeah.
and knows it's either going to work or not.
Yeah, and helps people understand that. And we'll definitely come to a visual example of that at the end of the project that we share so that you can think about your numbers in the same way. That will really help you picture that. Capital gain is basically the increase in the value of that asset or property. So this is all about a fast 6 or 7 week add value approach, renovation approach to taking an existing build that has opportunity to improve, increase the appeal, widen the potential rental pool, make it more attractive to more people and increase the demand. And by adding the bedroom, which is the definition of cashflow hacking, we are going to allow more bodies in this house. It allows more people, families to come together, and also therefore elevate it from its original state into a value worth more because of the effort and care you've put in. And in this example, it'll be from a 3 to a 4 bedroom cashflow hack or increase to get that capital growth. Cash flowing, basically this is more of a descriptor of we want to create a high yield, so higher rent through adding value and adding bedrooms, and then therefore cash flowing. So the higher we can nudge that rent per week through adding value and up speccing the house from a 3 to a 4 bed in this case, it helps elevate the income relative to how your fixed outgoings, basically. So mortgage, so interest only most commonly, rates, insurance, property management fees, and maintenance, any bits and pieces. So basically we want to achieve a cash flowing, especially for Dick and Jane. Just really briefly, the sweet spot, I believe, for investors truly is to push that, cash flow. we will add value in that 6 or 7 weeks, and over time, the longer you can hold the property based on historic rates, we're looking for that growth in value, which equates to wealth later on for you. The sweet spot is about pushing, or really forcing that appreciation through converting it from a 3 to a 4 bed and achieving highest cash flows that help you then go back to Tracy and say, hey, I'm done. Here is my income, including this awesome rent. I'd like to go for the next one. And it's about being active. So if you are interested to force a growth of your portfolio and buy properties now or faster than having to wait a few years for the property to naturally go with the market that you can't control, then this is the strategy for you. Cash flow hacking, just to really be very clear, if this is the first time you're seeing an example with us, on the left is a table of a property that could be a new build or an existing build that is not renovated. The line at the top that has the dollar sign is roughly break even. And this is a real example of basically how most cash flows look the last few years, right? So if you are buying a 3-bedroom house and getting a 3-bedroom rent, you are largely topping up to the bank just to keep them on interest only and off your back. So what we are going to go through tonight is not that. This is otherwise known as buying an average return. You buy, hold, definitely different merits to having that. We won't go into those. We are tonight about buying a property to add value to. Cash flow hacking is looking to add a cosmetic room addition. And as you'll see shortly, we're justifying that because if a house is older or redundant or in disrepair, it needs a whole bunch of money spent to improve the paint, the flooring, a new kitchen, bathroom, bring it up to a new build look inside. But you are trying to get the best rent, and there's only so far you can push the growth of rent if you keep the same number of bedrooms. So just think about that for a second. We want to manufacture a higher return because if you want to cash flow and you want to go to Tracy and say, hey, I'd like to buy that next one, I have the servicing, it's better to have an 8% return, which is basically what we're all about, versus one that's 4 or 5. The graph to the right is literally the before and so left before, right hand after of a very similar property. So this is literally one property. Left is not renovated, right hand is cash flow hacked, increased by a number of bedroom. Tracy, do you want to sort of intro the property door or talk about how Dick and Jane brought this to you and how it fitted to your lending strategy or criteria and pre-approval?
Absolutely. So I didn't actually even see pictures or anything of it. I did sale and purchase. But basically for the lender, we just need to make sure it's structurally sound and not falling down. So that's the big thing. When you're buying a property under the pre-approval that we had, it couldn't be a full flip, basically.
A full what, sorry?
Like a full flip. So it couldn't be something that's got grass growing through the windows.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So my question, when Jane rang me to let me know that we're putting an offer, I literally said to her, has it got 4 walls and a roof? Is it standing? Just cosmetic work that needs to be done. Because the other thing that's really important and why I love working with you is because if we're going to start needing consents and stuff, we can't go unconditional on a property until we've got the consents.
Oh, really? Okay. And it also doesn't go with the
coming in straight away almost.
Right. And so my obsession personally and how I help my clients is to retain control. And I think for them, it's a first time renovation. They need comfort. I need comfort that they have comfort. And so it's not pushing the boundaries too far where they relinquish control to other parties, right? Anytime I've broken my personal buy box or my rules and gone, oh, okay, maybe I will add another dwelling or I will get this consent. Regardless of what is planned, when you have to involve the council, within reason, small things like additional toilets, pretty compartmentalised and we can contain that risk usually. But if it's something larger than that, like extending the floor plan to get that additional room, I can tell you right now that the time and cost will be 2 or 3x what you've even had as a fixed quote from suppliers and council until you actually reach that end point. You still have to do absolutely everything upon the decision or the change decision by council because you don't have your result until you finish that process, right? So time and paperwork just equals more money. So we're all about how do we cosmetically enhance and not compromise the property. in a fast way. So basically, we want to know as much as possible about the incomes, right? And Dick and Jane the best. So as long as that was fitting into your numbers, basically these are some before photos. So this is in New Plymouth. It's in a suburb where we have many examples of success, both in terms of the type of property, but also the strength of the gentrification and the money going into that location that sort of warrants for us to spend a bit more money and renovate as well, because we can see that there's plenty of evidence of upside, families moving in, and actually looking at this property. If I go back to that initial photo, just looking at it, there are certain things that I coach my clients to look for, because if we're buying online, we're very much relying on what information is provided digitally, unless you want to jump on a plane or in the car. When I look at this property, I can see it's had a couple of lives immediately. We've largely got timber joinery, but then there's this extra sort of protrusion with aluminium joinery. There's a ranch slider, which is not typical of that era. There are other photos that would also show a ranch slider off one of the bedrooms. Again, aluminium joinery doesn't fit the original profile, and that's not common, but these add some really nice accents to what would otherwise be a typical 3-bed, 1-bath weatherboard home. So we're looking at points of differentiation for you as the owner, but also for the tenant. What are some extras that give this appeal? And in terms of the floor size, it was a really generously sized 3-bedroom. That is one of the things that we look at. And it wasn't, the bones were good, it just needed some love, basically. So what I really, first of all, liked for Dick and Jane is that the proportions of the spaces firstly look quite generous. Even when I look at the kitchen, it's a galley, walk-through kitchen. You can see the door frame width. I don't care what the photographers try to make effect. I'm always looking at the relative sizes or proportions of things, because I just don't trust those photographers. But when you look at that door frame, relative to it, you can see there's a nice depth in there, which is actually wider than normal. Top right, you can see there are some things that have occurred that are not original that allow you to think, hang on, there's some extra space. So what can we do to make use of this? If we're looking to find an area to add the bedroom, what can we do? On that note, we're going to go into another poll. So actually there was a poll, I threw this on the Instagram story earlier today, and I'm just going to pull that up next to me because I want to see proportionate to here. I'm going to ask you, actually I'm just going to stop share so I don't give it away, just in case. Perfect. Okay, cool. What I'm going to do is throw up a poll. Let me bring that up one more time. So the question is going to be, where do we add the 4th room? So you've got this lovely kitchen area, dining, sunroom. So sort of orientate yourself to those photos, and a lounge down the bottom. So have a little look at that.
I'm so excited for this one.
Okay, I'm going to pop up. Oh, actually, sorry, there's one with numbers. I should have just got one more. I'm too scared to give it away. Okay, just jot this down. So 4 places you could answer for where that 4th bedroom could go. We're not removing walls. We're not compromising the integrity. We're actually adding. Okay. Hold that thought. We'll jump to the poll. Oh, jump to the poll. Right. 1, 2, 3, or 4. Where would you put that bedroom?
Why I love what you do, because for me, I would just be like, just paint the whole thing pink. It'll be fine. Don't worry about it.
That's not answering the question. No.
Yeah. We will be building me a Barbie house one day.
Okay, cool. I'll give you a couple seconds. We'll show you through the step-by-step what we did. And also just to note, like we've said, this hasn't even settled, right? So Dick and Jane haven't even seen this house. Tracy and I haven't seen this. Oh, sorry, I've been through DD. We haven't actually undergone the transformation, but it's so exciting because the solution here is actually not like one we've shared before. I have a client, actually also in Hamilton, who we have implemented this, which is a great way to show that it has really worked. In their case, it actually increased a 4 to a 5 bed from 575 to 820 a week through that room. Bit of a spruce up as well. Okay, in the poll, share results. Okay, what's the split? We have, 50% say number one. Oh, maybe I wonder if I can share screen as well. Does the poll stay up?
Yes.
Yeah, nice. So 50% saying number one.
Just move it over. There we go.
Can you see the results, Tracy? Because I can't.
Yes, I can.
Okay, what percentage said number one? Sorry, 50?
50% said number one. 28% said number two.
Mm-hmm.
9% said number three.
Mm-hmm.
12% said number four.
Ooh, okay. That is so interesting. When I first walked in and with Andy, our builder, the default was here's this extra space with that sunroom. So I totally get where that direction.
Poll results. There we go.
Oh, okay, cool. Go back. Very interesting. So, should we do the reveal?
Yeah. Drum roll.
Drum roll. So this is bedroom number 4. Again, commenting on the proportions. Actually, those results were really consistent with the Instagram poll. So this is a really interesting one in terms of we're adding in a wall, which is really simplistic. The cost of materials and labor is really basic. We can already still use the same door that was the entrance to the lounge. What you may have noticed in the previous photo is on the bottom line there, it is an external door. It's really important that you make decisions like this based upon the expertise of your builder and with the council, the building code. So one of the key considerations if you are changing a layout is about escape. Sort of fire escape is really the definition. So based on any point within the house that you might be standing, how long does it take you to get outside for safety? And so you have to be very cognizant of that, make sure that you're complying. That's the biggest thing. In this case, what was really awesome about the fact that the sunroom was there is that there were already 3 exits. So that really allowed us to test that idea, and what we felt was best as part of this solution was to swap out one of the external doors. In this case, where bedroom 4 is, the back entrance to the house will be replaced with an opening window for the bedroom. And we're going to keep it to the same width as the door jamb, so we're not changing the structure at all. But the way that this flows is really great because this bedroom is off the hallway, in keeping with the rest of the hallway and the other bedrooms. So it's a very organic, natural way to add in that room. The interesting thing here is that there's zero compromise. This house is actually so generous that the lounge itself, and also to my comment earlier about how wide the kitchen is, at the moment, there is cabinetry on both sides. But my thinking is there are so many options. If it were mine, I'm thinking I would run it along the external wall, possibly could keep this and add storage in, or really open it up so that it feels much more collectively lounge, kitchen, dining, and that dining can extend into the sunroom. So it's a really lovely modern flow. Depending how much fun they and Andy, our builder, want to have, maybe they can look at a breakfast bar, look at an island layout. There are lots of options because of this space. What did you think, Trace?
Oh, it was amazing. Like, I did not know where you were going to put that extra room because of all the fire things. But I think like an extra room with its own entrance as well is just game changer.
Yeah, so I think it's a really good point. So we're going to always rely on the property managers and the local team on ground to say what's appropriate, what's wanted
Yeah.
by the tenant, and there are different options because we're swapping it out so we can, which is really good. So just a quick point on why we would bother to add a room. Why does that become a key criteria if you're following our strategy? Back to the earlier comment, if you're going to cosmetically refresh, you saw the original photos, the whole place can be refreshed. To be cost effective, we're not changing any walls and layouts and things like that. Might be different if it were a higher end house, for example. But in this case, we're trying to minimize debt and increase the rent. So the more we can contain the spend, the higher the chance of getting towards our goal 8% return, right? So post-renovation rent per annum divided by all of their capital invested or debt. We want that to be 8%. That's our target, which is something I've just sort of set, I guess. It sets a benchmark, right? And there are lots of other benefits which we'll talk about with respect to the overall property benefits, but that's really what we're leading with here. To illustrate, this is from the tenancy.gov.nz website about market rents based on all of the bonds from tenancy agreements that are lodged with government. This is a good illustration of explaining why we want to add a bedroom to get the best bang for buck or return on dollars. If you can see here, if you go ahead with a cosmetic renovation, so full new kitchen, new bathroom, paint, flooring, etc., there is, in this case, it actually already looks quite generous. There's about a $95 spread, if you will, say from the worst presenting house at $600 per week up to $695. That's actually quite impressive. Normally, it might, at this stage in the market, it could be $30 to $50. So if you spend, say, $65,000 on a general cosmetic refresh, if the increase in rent is $30 or $40, it's not that exciting. But by contrast, if we find the right house with those sort of interesting layouts and ways we can convert spaces to add another room, then you can see here there's a massive increase again because you've jumped up a rung in terms of number of bedroom, and that increase in rent is so much greater. But the kicker is that what was a $65,000 cosmetic renovation in this scenario, there's only about $4,000 or $5,000 more to find the right house where you can add the room. So basically the rent goes from $695 to $750 in this specific data set by spending less than $5,000. All of a sudden that makes the property perform much more efficiently. I'll just go into budget, and Tracy, if you want to comment at all on any positives or negatives or considerations on the lending, jump in. This is a really broad breakdown of their actual quote. I've just tried to simplify it so you can see those key areas, because I know there's a lot of interest in what's a relative amount of, what's a good split. Our planned interior upgrade, so just to be clear, most of the time we are looking for a property we can focus on adding the additional bedroom and upgrading the kitchen, bathroom and cosmetic interior. Generally speaking, there'll be a small budget for maintenance, but depending on the buyer's situation and what they want to take on, usually we don't look at properties that need any exterior or major exterior works. And in this case, through our due diligence, we found that there were a couple of roofing leaks or old leaks, and also the exterior could do with a paint job. So given it's a hold, they want to hold this for years and decades, they've decided, yep, cool, let's go in and do a really good job. So basically everything's taken care of. We never have to do this again, set and forget. So the planned works inside is $48,500 roughly for all of the cosmetics. So kitchen, bathroom, the wall, no, actually not the fourth bed, that's below. It includes the materials and labor for our builder. And the paint interior exterior gives you a rough split of the inside and outdoor plaster paint full shebang. Plumbing and electrical, they're very redundant old hot water cylinder wiring, etc. So there's quite a lot of upgrade. That's slightly on the higher side, shows you the property's been sort of neglected for a long time. And in this case, a re-roof. So normally we would be looking at around about $70,000 to $80,000 for everything on the inside plus maintenance. But in this case, we are adding in a re-roof. So that is outside of what we normally would budget for. But because they negotiated so well down to such a wicked price, like a regional centre, $395K for a purchase of a freehold standalone, that is so awesome. It actually allowed them to then re-roof because they're basically discounted their original contract price, finding those issues or challenges, reducing the price as such, and then factoring that into the original costings, which is awesome. Anything to add on that?
No, not really. The only thing, once again, it's super important when you're doing things like this, a bank, you have to explain to them where the money is going. And like, you can't just say to the bank, so here, your little spreadsheet that you've given, I would have never got away with going to the bank saying I need $48,500 for build works interior. They would have been like, what are you doing?
All right, okay. And as long as
it's important to have the teams, because then they know, like, it's all under the responsible lending, but then they know where the money's going, basically.
Yeah, I mean, this is basically, I'll run through here just quickly the images. The wall will come across roughly here. If you look at the size of that gigantic couch, you can see that allowing a wall through here, this becoming the new fourth bedroom door, there's still a huge area that connects to the rest of the house. We haven't settled, we haven't renovated. Here's a concept from a recent client renovation to give you an idea of contrast and finish. So when you look at that new kitchen on the right, that is like a new build end product, right? So on the rental market, you've paid for a second-hand house effectively, but you can achieve a best-in-class rent. That's basically what we want to do. Our kitchens through our supplier with the discounts we get are such great quality kitchens with engineered stone top, all the great German hardware, etc. For a a kitchen of the size, we're about $6,000, which is awesome. Very, very strong pricing, and that really helps nudge the net value add. We upgrade the bathroom. Here's another example. This is all very much like for like. And here's another example of, in that case on the right, the dining room that was more of a classic hack, that dining room became the fourth room, and this is the dining area as a result. Having that external access, much like here, allows that sort of extension of the living area and lots of natural light, given when you add a wall, you could be detracting from the light. So hey, we'll go into the numbers because you'll be thinking about how is this relevant to you, your situation. Purchase price $395, renovation, basically all debt and $500,000. That's roughly a maximum that you can spend, that we've seen hundreds of times before, which no matter what you do, it's very hard to stretch a single rent and maintain that 8% return. In terms of the value, we want to think about leverage, right? So the ambition of a client that works with us combined, especially with myself, is they're looking to add fast value, get the returns up to increase servicing and income, and then access that usable equity so that they can use that gain as a partial deposit or a deposit towards the next purchase. So in this case, we haven't completed that and achieved the point where yet we can get that registered valuation on paper. However, compared to sales in the suburb and also previous similar projects in that suburb, I've gone with a conservative equity gain here to get to a value of 600, just to model it out so you can see. And then I'm going to show you the comparable spec of this type of property versus that new build money, to give you an illustration of basically how much value you're getting with these existing builds, with the house that has this opportunity to copy and paste what we've done here, as well as having land and that relative opportunity for the future. So in this case, let's say for leveraging purposes, Tracy, this property will revalue at 600,000. In the past of a similar nature, it's been up to 670. So we'll just go conservative here. Would you like to sort of explain, I'll go here. Would you like to summarize accessing usable equity to roll this result into another investment property, if that's what Dick and Jane would like to do?
100%. So it's exactly the same as what I explained before. So you've got 600,000 of total house value. That's what the bank deems it's worth. We have to leave 30% behind. Have to leave 30% behind as it's an investment property. So I've got my calculator here.
Oh, hopefully I've got that in the next slide, actually. Oh, hang on.
I
think I might have split this off,
anyway,
but actually, if you want to,
that means we can get lending for this property of up to 420,000.
Yeah.
Now, because of the way that I've done this one, we've secured 395,000 against this house because the renovations are actually secured against the other house. So instantly, they've got 25,000 to put towards the next house.
Okay.
However, we know that they've already increased.
Yeah, so that's so cool. Okay, share with us the actual value of this property based on contract was December, January. You've gone into Velocity, your system, and actually had a look at what the bank already thinks the property's worth. And we haven't added.
This is before we haven't touched it. We haven't even settled on the bloody thing. Like nothing. And it's currently worth 480,000. So the clients have had an $85,000 increase in equity. They haven't even paid a mortgage payment.
I don't even own it yet.
The keys. They don't even own it yet. So whatever renovations you're going to be doing is great because that's another 85,000 that we can access.
Oh, that's so awesome. That actually segues nicely into this. So um, these are actual figures from homes for comparable properties in this immediate street. And one thing I wanted to highlight is the efficiency, or how we, the goal of our investors is to increase that cash flow return by adding rooms, etc. The price of an existing build is such a discount. So that 395K, which is this property on the right, is like a 30% discount roughly compared to the new build equivalent on the same street, as far as like a recent value, equivalent values at the same time. So what's amazing is if you look left to right, both are 3 bedrooms originally. You've actually got an extra toilet with the new build on the left. The house is slightly larger, and it's actually a 2-storied duplex, part of a duplex, so it's one of 2. And the land parcel with that is 361. Dick and Jane's property is like 3-4 times the size of land, and that is the future opportunity, and that is the difference, as well as forcing that value appreciation through the hack and the reno. There's also that second value add round where, depending on what the district plan says and will change to in future, it's likely that they will have more ability as time goes on to add more dwellings, more rentals to the land they already own here, as well as possibly subdivide, which means they could have more than one land asset to either hold or sell and reduce debt depending on their goals at the time. But in terms of value, that's 70% of the purchase price of the new build on the street, where there's literally nothing you can do because it's so new. But the benefit of having that evidence down the street is that that new money buys less for more, means that when we go to revalue at the end, it will have a huge upswing on the value. So we've already made 85K here. This is really going to assist. When this is a 4-bed, 1-bath, it's definitely going to be north of that, which is why we show that example. So here are the results. Left-hand column original, so purchase price, reno spend. Keep in mind we're doing a lot more than typical. Usually around that $70,000 to $80,000 would be our planned spend. The rent per week was about $450, I think, from memory, on the tenant before. It was really run down, and in fact wasn't even fully healthy homed. Cashflow hacked, we are going to achieve $750 per week is about the typical result we would achieve here. One thing I would say though is plan for vacancy and plan that cash flows are a little bit softer. The rental market all around New Zealand is the same. It's there is a higher level of stock available, rentals available, than normal. So I would make sure you're stress testing your analyses, but this would be a really typical result. And the reason I've put for yield at the bottom 7.8 to 8.1 is if this property were a true example of our typical property, just spending money on the internal, not having to repaint and re-roof, this would be an 8.1% return, but all in here will be about 7.8. So that's not to say, hey, it's not 8%, why would we go ahead? Because of all those other benefits, current and future, we have to keep that within the context of all the goals and what Dick and Jane want out of this property. And already, I'm just going to go backwards a little bit, sorry, because we've gone in a little bit of a different order, but I just want to really showcase the contrast and cash flow based on, let me find that for you. Okay, so this example, this graph here is literally, hang on, this table here shows you that house, so this house, on the left, again, coming back to the original concept, would be a top up of $7,800 per year, whereas the actual result is neutral and slightly putting dollars in their pocket. So not having to top up, and as long as our expected rates go the way that they've been advised. What have they secured, Tracy? It was 18 months they've secured at?
2 years at 4.99 is what we've done.
2 years at 4.99. Was that right?
Yes, yeah. It makes their property $58.74 positive a week.
Amazing. So great. Otherwise, if they bought the property and did not renovate, they would be topping up until year 7 or 8, basically.
Yeah.
So that's the difference. That's the so what. Like, that's why you've got to take those 7 weeks, make the most of it. It sets that cash flow high from day one, and then you get the gains from there. Cool. Okay, so we've been through this example, but just to recap, on this rental, basically, if it revalues at $600,000, 70% is what they can get up to or top up to, which is 420K as a result of what they have created from the renovation. Let's move on. What that means is accessing and drawing down that usable equity, that top up, actually can form a new 30% deposit for another property, Tracy, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the next project, depending on what they come back to Tracy and they say that they want to achieve, that 143,000 top up can become a deposit on this new Plymouth one, and then the purchase of the next one has the 70% balance on that. So this, from an LVR or loan to value ratio point of view, means that this result, if we assume that's the result from the value add, actually already allows them to buy a property of up to $478,000. The other component to that, you jump in, Tracy, is obviously in the income side of things. So they would still have to match up to the bank's affordability, right?
Yeah, correct. But as interest rates are coming down, so is affordability. So you can borrow more money today than you could 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. I know that that's a bit of a sweep through the visuals of the renovation. That I know that we are right up on our time, what we've promised that we'd take from you. So now, tomorrow we're going to send out an email with your opportunity to check in with more details in your situation with Tracy and myself. So yeah, I'll let you take over with what you'd like to cover if and when they push the button to catch up with you tomorrow, Tracy.
Yeah, absolutely. So you'll get a booking link. Feel free, click in, make a booking, online booking. Free to have a meeting with me. And we literally can run through the numbers. So it's really important to bring how much you're currently earning, what the address of your property, because I can have a look at that, and what the current mortgage is. So we can see how much usable equity you have, and then what that's going to transpire for your next property as well. Then we could just put a strategy together, whether we're ready to go now, next year, next month, whenever.
Or steps to get ready, right? Even if you're not ready, Tracy's absolutely the person to talk to because if you've heard or seen her backstory, literally she's done all these things for herself. So really perfect role model for you to take advice from on how to be ready.
Don't ask me to come with a hammer because
Yeah.
my friend said that's allowed.
I think we've made it fairly clear in terms of what we're really focusing on is investors who, in this case, where Tracy works with myself and the team, is we're trying to help investors get ahead and push the growth of their portfolio really fast. So if these things on this list here resonate with you, you want to create wealth, you want to build equity fast through planned and targeted renovation scopes, increase servicing, push for that positive cash flow to help your situation, not detract from it. This is basically what we are focused on. Power teams around the country, one-on-one with myself, regular whips, and Reno roadies. That is the actual last thing we need to check from you is if you are interested in what you've seen and you'd like to actually see in the flesh with a lot more time up our sleeve the ins and outs with the team of the example we've just gone through, we're going to run a poll which is going to be for you to win your spot. We are going to select tomorrow 3 of you to offer you to join us in the Reno Roadie in New Plymouth, which is on May 23rd. I'm just going to skip this. I'm going to pop the poll up right here. So if you would like your chance to win one of those 3 spots, it'll be for yourself plus one, friend, partner, whoever, May 23rd in New Plymouth to walk through this real opportunity to immerse yourself with the team, with us and with the investors, Dick and Jane, who are not Dick and Jane, but we'll point them out. And you can ask them yourself about their experience, their goals, find your similarities, contrasts, and just learn from them because already through this process they are so learned about and clear about the results. They're so excited. It was really fun for me. I met them face to face a couple of weeks ago, and it was just so awesome to see how grateful they were for you, Tracy, and actually recounting the things I've heard you say to me about the strategy. So I know they've really taken it in and known how much care you've put in to listen to their goals. So I'm really excited to walk through with them and see their faces when they see the transformation of their house.
It's going to be great. And I loved favorite text of the day was texting her today and being like, want some good news? Your house is already worth 85 grand more.
You've made 85 grand.
You've made 85 grand in 3 months. Well done. You haven't even got your keys.
Amazing. Thank you for answering that, everybody. We will be able to send out run that competition tomorrow. Select those three and call you up and invite you to come with us and our other accelerators, boardroom members, and the team come and meet with us and see not only this house, but a lot, multi-units, standalone properties, current and previous renos. So it's going to be the most exciting time. But we will send out the email tomorrow. Should we just check in the Q&A? Do we have time for maybe 3 questions?
Yeah, we've got 10 in there. Do you want to jump in and choose 3?
Yeah, cool. Okay. First of all, hi there. How were you able to get the price reduction? So on contract, we had a due diligence clause for 15 working days, and that enabled us to go through some really fundamental reports that we needed to get. So Better Inspect, BETTA, I love around the country. The reports for buildings, toxicology, asbestos are really digestible. They use a traffic light system. We want to look at the integrity of the building, so building report, which Tracy cares for the bank. Same with toxicology, check for meth or any toxicology issues there from its past. We want a clear. There are insurance and tenancy law considerations that go into that, so very important to understand. A limb from council to really understand a lot more about the property and get legal advice, and then run other due diligence. And basically through the results of those reports, we found many opportunities through the condition of the property, the history of the property, that we were able to use as a lever at the point that they were ready to go unconditional, because Tracy had said, cool, the bank is happy, you have an unconditional finance offer. And that was the final way that we could say, hey, we found all these things, we need this reduction, and if you confirm, we're ready to go unconditional right now. And that's a really big motivator.
It was, once again, it was all of us work, like you, me, lawyer, and client all working together to get that strategy in place, though. It was like, what are we going to do here? Should we dangle a carrot over here and get this done to get what we needed done? So that really was teamwork, that one.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to find a lending one for you. How did the lending work around the deposit to vendor, also for the renovations? So I wonder if there's a deposit on the contract. So when you go unconditional, there's a nominated amount. Do you want to talk about the difference, Tracy?
Yeah. So when we talk about deposits in the bank sense, it's very different to what's on a contract. So in this instance, we actually put cash down for the deposit because we had enough, due to, with such a long settlement, for us to get a short-term overdraft secured against the current property, which is what I would normally do, you can only have a 60-day settlement, which wasn't going to work for this project. So I jumped on the blower to the clients. We reworked a bunch of stuff, put some cash down, but we're able to draw back on that cash at settlement. The renovations, this one, we didn't do progressive drawdowns. We've literally just gone, because it's sort of fixed price, we're just drawing down one big lump sum, and they can just pay the builder as they go, right? Because that suits the risk profile. Some of my projects, we do either progressive drawdowns or revolving credits. So they only start paying interest, they draw it out and start paying. But for the risk profile of this one, we in particular, we just did it, and we secured it against the current property to help with our equity position for the next one.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, we'll do one more question, then we'll throw up just one more question for you to answer based on what you think is next. Do you need to understand more about the lending? You'll probably want to chat with Tracy first for your own circumstance, and then otherwise, if you're ready to replicate this kind of result for yourself, that's definitely where you need to have a call with me, and we can go through other examples. But first of all, one last one. So for gross yields, how do you work out rents post reno, I think it is, extra bedroom or reno to run your numbers in DD? So to calculate the gross return, we look at several scenarios. The first one is, if we buy this property and we keep it as it is, 3-bed, 1-bath, current condition, what is the likely rent? Gather that from the government stats, from live listings on Trade Me, and also Truth On Ground is your trusted property manager on ground. Didn't talk much about them, but literally they are the word of truth for myself and my investors, because there's no point assuming things when you're remote. You need to know their local insights. So we run a scenario. Is this 395K debt and this current rent okay? Or scenario two, let's spend more and add debt, which sounds a bit crazy, but add debt to the purchase price and look at the rent as the additional bedroom. And if you get a higher return or efficiency of that debt, then the answer generally steers us to this looks good. Let's go into more due diligence, but this is pointing towards a potentially suitable property. Hey, I'm just going to throw up that last poll so that you can decide what you think is your next step. Is it that you're ready to go for that property and that type of project, or are you needing help with your lending first of all?
I'm just answering some of the questions. If you can hear me typing away, I'm just.
Oh, nice. Okay. Thank you. Cool. Okay. So roughly 2/3 needing to look at lending advice with you, Tracy, to work out basically what is going to suit them, right? And then you can work out their risk profile, what types of strategies might work for them. Talk about this example. Tracy can talk through all the details with you, and you can work out if it's the right type of thing for you or if a different strategy is more suitable. So that's your opportunity.
Ilse and I, we have a couple. We have a few clients on the go at the moment, so we've got all sorts of different strategies going on.
So I think if you exactly. So I think most importantly, to make the best use of your time is if you do need advice and you want some insight, even if you want to talk about this project with respect to the lending and whether you can replicate, book in with Tracy first and then book in with me after. Because as long as there's a guide or guidance from Tracy on, hey, let's get a pre-approval to be sure of what you can do, or you might say, hey, no brainer, just go for it, get me a conditional contract and start. Either way, you'll get a gauge, or Tracy will say whether you're ready to start or not. And if you are, then let's have a chat about if it's this type of project or property type that we can do for you. It doesn't always have to be a standalone house. Sometimes we look at double income properties, duplexes, multi-units, depending where you are in your portfolio journey. We can talk about that as well. But that goes so quickly.
I was going to say, I'm answering all these questions and more are just coming in.
Are there any that you want to share that you think is quite a common one?
That heaps of people are asking about, do we help people in other cities? And somebody, which I've answered, asked a lot of your clients, Ilse, do find that they buy in a different city to where they live?
Almost all. So I'll pop this up because I did race through this. But this is can you see the map?
Yes.
Awesome. So we have power teams. My intention for my investors and clients is to get the best of both potential for capital growth long term over their hold period or ownership period, combined with let's push those cash flows through a reno to get the best possible return. And so therefore, I guess I'm from New Plymouth, so a really good example is you can buy a $400,000 house in Wanganui, but you can also buy this one for $395 in New Plymouth. So it sounds similar in terms of debt, but we can achieve a higher rent in New Plymouth. So that's the first tick to say, okay, even if we did the same scope, the cash flow is going to be more robust. There are more employers, diverse economy, positive population growth versus Wanganui, smaller place, more dependence on certain employers or industries. That is the part that impacts your long-term wealth. So if it were 400K in Wanganui or 400K in New Plymouth, I'm helping my clients go for the strongest, robust location to create that wealth over time. But then we'll also push that return. So I guess what I'm saying is we have power teams like our builders, property managers, agents who really help us on ground, on market, off market. All sorts of opportunities come through these locations as a priority. But that's not to say we don't have contacts all around the place. These are just the places we really focus. So whether you're based in Melbourne or Iceland or wherever, the UAE, we can help you execute in all these places. No joke, we have someone in Iceland. So, so you might be in Auckland buying in Dunedin, or you could be in Iceland buying in Dunedin. You're still remote either way. So
Moving to Iceland, I'm out of here.
So I will download the questions, and I think between us we can probably answer them all and pop them out with the email as well. But keep an eye out for tomorrow. We will also put a link for the replay, so you can replay this at your own pace and time and go over the details, which I know we had to sort of speed up on a little. But book in with Tracy if you want to sort lending. Come meet with me if you want to talk about the projects we can do for you. Any last words, Tracy?
Nope, sorry, I was answering people's questions, but no, it's for me. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I hope that we're super passionate. We could literally talk about this for hours. In fact, Ilse's partner says that we do talk for hours. So thanks for listening.
We'll catch up with you soon one-on-one. Thank you so much for joining. Have a great rest of your evening and week, and happy Easter.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.